Eclipse releases. But let's look at some of the most noteworthy enhancements. So if you use multiple monitors with Eclipse, you will benefit from a feature here that when you open a new workbench window, it will now be placed very near the other one. So previously it always opened on the primary monitor, which could be quite far away from the current workbench window. And maybe you by then didn't even notice that something happened. So that has now been fixed. There's another improvement that relates to the performance when you have views that need to show a huge number of elements. Now there is a preference that by default is set to 1000, which controls the initial maximum number of elements that should be shown in views. And this preference applies to many views, in particular the problems and product explorer views. And the purpose is, of course, to avoid performance problems, because usually it's hardly useful to see more than 1000 elements anyway, because that's a quite big number. But if you still like the old behavior of not filtering, you can set this preference to 0. We can take a look at how it looks in Eclipse. So here we have 12.1 with the Model RealTime, Model RealTime 12.1 in Eclipse 2024.06 installed. And we can start by looking at where this preference is. So you will find it directly here, actually, in the general preference page. So it's now 1000, but just to show how it works, I can lower it to 10. And then we can take some example here. For example, this was too short. This one is big enough. So here you see it now shows show the next 10 items from remaining 17. So if you want to see them, you just click here, and then you can repeat until you have loaded everything into the view. Same here in the problems view. It will appear only the first 10 will be shown, and then you can click here to see the remaining 4. And it is remembered. So if you now expand it again, it will be shown. But if you expand another one that is long, then you will, maybe not have any here now. Yeah, now here, for example, you see it again. So you have to, if you want to get it back, you either have to reload the workspace or restart Eclipse to get back the limit of 1000 again. There is also an improvement in the launch dialog. So there is a new field where you can see the full path to the workspace that you have entered in the text box. This can help if you have workspaces with the same name at the different disk locations, or if you want to see how certain special characters such as the tilde character expands on Linux or Mac OS, or if you happen to use a character that is invalid on your operating system, you will get a message there already before you try to launch it. There is also an improvement in the quick search feature. So now if you have multiple such modeless dialog open, the search term is shown in the title, which makes it easier to know, because if you keep these open, it's convenient to be able to quickly click on the one that has the interesting content. In compare merge for text files, there is now information about how many differences were found in the file. So this information already before was present in the compare merge editor for models. Now it's the same visible on a text file compare merge. And the screenshot to the bottom right of this slide shows some situations that you probably have noticed. If you have many views open in the same view compartment, then it can happen that they are so small that you cannot really understand what to click. Worst case, maybe only one or a couple of characters. So now you can set a preference to always show the full titles. And of course, that means less views will fit, but then you will get that arrow pop-up button that you can click next to the rightmost view to see the other, or switch to the other views. And if you prefer to get rid of the view icons to fit more text, then you can also do that now by means of a new preference. In my opinion, one of the nicest new improvements is that they have improved the management of content types. So now you can very flexibly configure how Eclipse should behave when you double-click on certain text files with different file extensions, which editor it should open by default. And one such scenario where this is useful is if you are working with build variants, because they are, as you know, JavaScript files. So without this feature, if you just have double-clicked here, you would get this system editor trying to interpret the JavaScript, which in my case is Windows trying to run this JavaScript, which of course is not what I want. So Eclipse suggests that you may find on the marketplace some plugins that can help you with JavaScript development, but if I just want to make some small changes, that is a bit overkill. So now instead I could go here in Preferences and under General click Content Type, and I can, under the text category, create a child, which I can call JavaScript. And then for that JavaScript, I can associate it with .js file extension, and then say that whenever that is double-clicked, then let's make the generic text editor the default, and then apply and close. So now if I double-click, it will open in this generic text editor instead. So previously you had to always remember to right-click and do open with, and then decide what editor you want to use. But now it's much easier to apply a default editor for any kind of file extension, basically. And also a small note is that restart has been improved in Eclipse. So now it behaves exactly the same as if you would exit the tool and relaunch. Previously, there were some differences, for example, related to how Eclipse.ini, when that was parsed, which didn't happen during restart, but it happened only when you relaunched. So CDT also has lots of improvements that you can read about on these links. There is one note I like to make, something you may notice when you look in preferences in the new Eclipse, and that is under C++ editor, there is something called editor LSP. So LSP stands for Language Server Protocol, and it is actually a new implementation of CDT, which is not based on the old approach where C++ files are indexed and analyzed in the same workbench process of Eclipse, but instead use an external language server. And in this case, it's using CLangD, which is a CLang language server. This is actually the same technology that is used in Code RealTime and Visual Studio Code and Eclipse Thea. I mentioned this more for your information, so you can, of course, try this, but you should note that Model RealTime doesn't yet support this version of CDT, and I get the feeling that it's not the default and still maybe a bit experimental, but it's, I think, very promising, and we will keep track of how it evolves. And when this becomes the default CDT in Eclipse, we will also make sure that Model RealTime works with it.